think this story of the Transcontinental Railroad is such a compelling story of the people who made it happen. I'm not talking about the high rollers, not the money people, the Leland Stanfords and the Dodges, and even President Abraham Lincoln, who put it all in motion with an act that he signed. But the unsung heroes who are largely outcasts of our society, the Chinese laborers, the Irish immigrants, the freed African slaves, and the Mormon pioneers, they were all outcasts. And those are the people who did the back-breaking work and made it all happen. And they became as one. And there's a compelling story here and a great lesson for today, for the people of today, that our differences are what makes us strong, that this diversity and this inclusion is an important part of we succeeding today. And then the literal linking of a nation from the Atlantic to the Pacific by this transcontinental railroad, the first ever in the history of humankind, not only a literal uniting of a nation, but a symbolic uniting of a nation. But it started right in Promontory Summit, Utah. The whole world should hear this story.
This goes off, the girls have to flee so fast.
I got a call from Craig Jessop. He had gotten my name from, I work at Hale Center as well, and he got my name from Mark Dietlein as somebody who works with children and could put this piece together. And Craig Jessop, being the conductor of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, to me, he's, in my world, in the music world, he's a rock star. So when I got a call from him, I was like, it's Craig Jessop, you know. Anyway, he called me and he asked me if I would direct this piece. And then they decided for it to go in a slightly different direction. Then he said, we need you to write it. So that's how I first came on as a director, and then I ended up writing it.
I felt this should be geared towards children and families. The reason why is I'm a father of 4 and a grandfather of 10, and I know my grandchildren don't know anything about this at all. I was 19 years old for the centennial, May 10th, 1969, and I remember the centennial celebration. So to be here 50 years later to celebrate the sesquicentennial, I wanted to tell the next generation about this story. And when I presented that to the steering committee, they liked the idea a lot, and so we ran with it. And a couple of influences on the style was, I had just seen the Broadway musical Hamilton, and then we'd seen The Greatest Showman. And I said, if we could craft an original work that was in the style, a mixture of these two musical productions, I know the young people would flock to it, and it would appeal to all ages as well.
Basically, Craig Jessop is the guy who brought us on board and told us what the vision was for what he had in mind for this. And we talked back and forth on some of the things that he wanted, and then we dove right into the story. We dived into the history, because this is both a story that we had kind of sort of heard about, but didn't know that much about from school. And so when we started doing the research on this remarkable story, ideas and themes and the things that we wanted to communicate through the music started coming through. We started doing some research on composers and film work of stuff that we thought was inspirational. We listened a little bit to a musical called Bright Star that was written by Steve Martin. We listened to the soundtrack to a movie called Five-O Goes West. That was part 2 of American Tail. We researched scores like this. We didn't want the music to feel too overly boom chucky, and so it would feel cheesy. We wanted it to really recreate emotion for people when they were listening to this music.
I've been very privileged to work with some very talented composers, and I had recently worked with Steven Nelson, and I've been taken by the scope of his music. And it's a fresh young voice, a new voice, and he collaborates with his librettist, Anjanette Mickelsen. So that was the first member of the team that we needed to bring together. And I spoke with them, presented the idea, told them what we wanted to do and the story we wanted to tell, what were the important points to touch on. They worked for about 2 months and put it together, wrote some songs. We created a little preview with Doug Foxley and members of the Golden Spike Commission. Stephen brought some singers representing 4 men representing the Chinese, the freed African slaves, the Irish, and the Mormon pioneers, and blew us away. We knew immediately, but we also knew that was only half the job. We've got our writer, we've got our composer, we've got great lyrics, now we've got to stage it. And so we went to the Utah Children's Theater, and Jenny Howell, her family is behind the Utah Children's Theater, told her, we want this to be told by children. And she is a brilliant director, producer. She also worked with Anjanette and with Stephen in now crafting what he had done and they had done together into this 28-minute show. And magic has happened.
So I keep my head forward, make your eyes go over there.
Train.
Yep, that's it. That's exactly it. Okay, so then we're gonna go back the other way. Sure. Trains. I'm sorry, I said trains.
No, you're sorry. You're crazy. You're crazy about trains. So if you keep that idea in your head, so they take them by the mile, not by the hour. So then they started going, I gotta go faster because they make.
We've also created a chorus, a 150 voice chorus of 5th, 6th, and 7th graders from all over the state of Utah, and a band of high school students, principally from Box Elder and Bear River High School. Those 2 bands alternate every year playing the ceremony on May 10th. We felt like they had to be there for this. And it's been augmented with some members of the Utah State All-State Band. So you're going to see a cast of about 300 kids from 4th graders on up through high school seniors telling this story. And it's infectious. Every place we've done a preview, people have gone away saying, this is amazing, and they've seen a side to the story that they never heard before through the eyes of the people who had to do the work. So we're pretty excited about it.
You're just the man I've been waiting to talk to. This is Grenville Dodge. He's a great engineer and surveyor. Dodge, what's the best route for a Pacific Railroad to the west?
It will start somewhere around Omaha, Nebraska, and then continue.
This is his vision from the very beginning, that it would be about kids and that it would appeal to children, especially like 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, that band right in there. And I think the people that he chose, Stephen and Anjanette, were perfect to write this because it's really catchy, and I think kids are gonna listen to it and want to sing with it right away. So that was kind of our hope and our idea. This is the educational piece of the entire celebration. And when we were at a press conference, talked to Governor Herbert just for 2 seconds, and he shook my hand and he said, now what are you doing? I said, I'm in charge of the educational piece. He goes, yours is the most important thing. Yours is the part I care about the most. No pressure, right? But he cares so much that this piece teaches in a way, and with music, it goes straight in your head and straight to your brain, and you can learn faster and it'll stay with you longer if it's a musical about it.
The proof is all around us, and right now is our time. We set our sights, now we'll jump in love.
When I direct anyway, whether I'm children or not, I like to use humor. Maybe you noticed that. A little bit of humor goes a long way. The other thing is that children, and especially children actors, I don't treat them any different than grown-ups. I might laugh with them and kid with them a little bit more, but they're professionals. They know what they're doing. These kids that are out there, I don't have to teach them how to behave. I might like bend a little bit or say, hey, the next time you do a show like this. But I've worked with children, forever. This is my family's business. The Children's Theater of Salt Lake the Utah Children's Theater is my family's business. But I also am a great believer in them and their ability. There's a lot of people who think just because they're little they can't hold an audience. It really has nothing to do with how old you are. it's a different ability. A lot of people are just, these kids are like born with it, just like a grown-up. They're born with an ability to hold the stage, to concentrate, to focus. Theater is a discipline, and some of them are just, they're way more disciplined. And I'll tell you this, they learn so much faster than the grown-ups. They're sponges. The grown-ups will say, what's my line? And the kid will tell them. The kid knows everybody's lines, you know? So I've always loved working with children. They don't scare me. I think they're wonderful. I have a great faith in the ability of a child to teach and move people in theater just the same as a grown-up.
Working on the railroad provided not only money for these two different men, but literally a way out of the South, and for a chance for a new start westward.
The promised land is just around the bend, where we from the seeds the Lord has sown.
It's been such a fun process, but it's been kind of pieced together along the way. Most musicals you do, they give you a script, they give you the score, they show you right out front. This is what it's going to look like. You can kind of get a picture in your brain of what it's going to be. And we've just had each rehearsal, guess what, this has changed, guess what, this is different. But each time we've been able to catch a different little perspective. It's just really made this experience a living experience. We feel like it's always happening. We're not kind of getting something and just like, this is what it is, there you go. But we get to explore and it's just been so much fun.
A lot of us actually have known each other just from other shows that we've been in with each other, but there's a lot of people that I didn't know, and it's been super fun. Everybody's so nice. And the wonderful thing about this production that I've seen different from other productions that I've been in is that everybody is 100% in and ready to change and adjust and adapt to whatever we're doing. And that has helped out a lot because there's been a lot of changes and a lot of learning and growing that we've had to do as a cast. So.
Till I claim my own, the dreams in the end, combining my hand as one, as one.
It's been really cool. I've gone around telling people, like my parents, about the whole history, about everything, and it's cool that I get to like be in the history, to play a role as it. I love being Leland Stanford and Crazy Judah and all those parts. I love history. Me and my dad are big history nerds, so this is pretty cool. I'm trying to think about how it's gonna be like at the actual show. It'll be really cool, and when I'm performing, I kind of feel like I actually was in that time, and it just kind of like, I take it all in, and I don't get nervous anymore. It just feels easy and super fun. A transcontinental railroad is the only answer.
I've been thinking that same thing.
I knew like the basics about trains, nothing fancy, but now I definitely know a lot more. I guess it's kind of challenging to memorize everything, the lines, the blocking, the singing, the dancing. And then things change too, so you have to be really flexible. But overall, it's just been a great experience.
56 feet of track in a little less than 12 hours. This is the longest stretch of track that has ever been built by hand or machine in one day to this day.
The fact that we're doing this outside is brought in a huge amount of logistical problems, but maybe we'll call them challenges. Being outside, we have no idea. Promontory Summit, the weather has been different every single May 10th for years and years. Snowing, high winds, rain, hot, summer, spring. We have no idea what we're facing. And it's not a regular theater. We have no lights. We have to bring up our water. We have to bring up our food, bathrooms. We have to bring all of our set pieces up there. We only get one day to practice. The stage is going up the day before this thing is happening. And we're gonna be live on television in 24 hours from seeing it for the first time. Yikes! So getting talented people was a huge step in the right direction. We have Suzanne Carling, who's doing our costumes. She's so good. Every person walks out going, hey, this fits. Hey, what an idea, right? And we have people who are working on our set pieces. We're making a miniature caboose. I'm so excited. And there's food, dancing, cars. How are we going to get everybody up there? I'm not in charge of the 150 voiced children's choir. Thank you. Thank you. But they're coming up the morning of. There's 150 of them, and 50 high school band players that are coming up that morning that we're learning and integrating at the same time, and a celebrity narrator. Her name is Lauren Tom. She's coming. She's a wonderful actress. And they had thrown out all of these names, but I think having an older Chinese lady will give it such beautiful gravity.
There was an undeniable energy in the air with the anticipation of all the new possibilities and opportunities that lay ahead. Here at Promontory Summit on May 10th, 1860.
One of the challenges is the time of the musical, so we only have 28 minutes to tell the story, and there's so many interesting points that we wanted to put into the story that we just didn't have time for. But the biggest thing was we wanted to make sure that every single group of people got highlighted in a special way for the special work that they did in the story, and to make sure that their story was told well and accurately and represented their thoughts and their beliefs and their experiences throughout the story.
Crack of explosions that ripped away the rock. They become.
Think about it piece by piece, rail by rail. That's what this process has been from the creative team, from Jenny and Stephen and Angie, and what they're working on, and then other people who are involved, the Historical Society, the railroad people, just really wanting to make this thing perfect, wanting to make it represent each group of people and the heritage and everything involved with such honor and respect. I think the attention that they have to detail, and that they are taking the time to review things and fix things, I just think, we owe it to the people who are honoring in this production to take it with the most care, I think.
Fighting for freedom, to get our brothers and sisters out.
Finding Asian actors, dancers, performers who are available was a big deal. And finding African Americans, big deal. We had to do a lot of searching. And so we had an open audition, and then a lot of calls. I called the heads of all the universities around in their acting departments to get the right. It needs to look right. It needs to be right. And part of that is out of respect for how it really was and telling the right story. So historically, we want to be as accurate as possible, not shove the yucky stuff underneath. I don't believe in that anyway with history. I think it's better to have it, let's just talk about it.
The thing about this story that's so incredible is we had all these different groups of people that had no reason to like each other, to work together. They were the outcasts of society, and they all experienced prejudice in their own way. And through this experience, they learned to work together. And because they learned to work together, something was accomplished in history that has never been accomplished before or since the building of the Transcontinental Railroad. So one thing is, let's all see each other for people rather than as objects or labels. And then the other thing is have a dream and work towards it. Like, the reason this was built is because all of these different groups of people were working towards some kind of better dream for themselves and their families, which is why they were willing to sacrifice so much to make this thing happen.
3, 4, 5.
I really felt this is important because this is a community that didn't really get the coverage that they deserved. And so it's kind of an emotional experience for me to be able to represent them.
It's been really, really neat to learn about, the Irish immigrants that came and left, most of them left their families to come and work on the railroad and to help bring the two railroads together. It's been fun.
The proof is all around us, that right now is our time.
And so I think it's kind of a cool thing to recognize the freed slaves, because they are a part of our history and they need to be known, instead of somebody who's, kept under the rug as they were at that time, basically. And so I think it's great, and I was all on board because I get to be a part of showing that type of story.
In the end, combined in my head as one.
And they did work together as one. Teamwork!
Hannah is the only woman that saw the completion of the railroad, so she was there from when it started on the West Coast to when it ended at Promontory Summit. And she was kind of this motherly character for all the men. They would come to her house and she would fix them up, she'd cook them dinner. She kind of took care of them along the way.
That's a tall order representing 11,000 Chinese American immigrants. And I'm Vietnamese American, so not technically Chinese, but I approached it from I'm helping to tell the story of all these Asian American immigrants who came here, and every single Asian American that lives here in America knows that story. Like their parents, their grandparents, they're immigrants and they came here. So yeah, I'm thinking of all the people that came before me that helped bring me here, give me this life.
It's humbling, really, because even I look back, I am African American, and that's my history, Maybe not necessarily here in Utah, but it was, I think it's just great to show a part of that history in such a good light, to where there was unity, especially during that time of the railroad and everything like that. So if I can kind of show unity and show a goodness in a time period of hardship, I think I'm in.
I have a first grader in elementary school, and so they're going to watch it, and I really hope that it inspires them and makes them excited about history, and that something so historic and epic really happened here in Utah, and that it inspires them to want to learn more and to research and maybe go out and explore some of the awesome things that are happening in our state for the Golden Spike.
Well, I hope they understand what happened with the construction of the railroad and all the personalities, all the resources and the sacrifice that it took to make it by the time that they wanted it to be done.
I hope they can remember the huge sacrifices that this country was basically built by outcasts and immigrants and people on the outside, right? And it's so important to remember those stories, even today.
The railroad could not have been built, let alone finished, without these thousands of nameless Chinese men. They were little understood and largely invisible to the men who employed them. The Iron Road, as they called it.
I'm hoping, number one, the children will realize the great achievement that was made by our nation 150 years ago, that once again they will see that people from diverse cultures can transcend any differences and come together and achieve something greater than they could ever do alone, and how people come together. That's where true greatness is achieved.
You have to keep that in mind when you're writing and also when you're directing. What do we want them to feel? What's the point? Why are we doing this? And so when I was first starting to write it, I kept saying, what's our point? What is the point? What people should feel when they leave is I want them to be proud that they're American. I think that's something that maybe sometimes we lose now. They're not proud of being American. And no, our past is not perfect. Of course we've made mistakes. We're such a young country compared to everybody else. We're so young. But we do amazing things as Americans because we've learned how to work together with people who are different. And there's no greater example of that than in this story of the Transcontinental Railroad. The Mormons, the Irish, the freed slaves, the Chinese, they weren't best friends. They didn't work together all day and then go home with their arms around each other and say, hey, come on over to our campfire. No, they stayed completely separate. And yet, in spite of that, they worked together every day with respect and got the work done because they saw that they were a part of something that was bigger than themselves. If that isn't a lesson for today, I really just don't know what is. So I think when people leave, I would like them to feel inspired and proud that that is an American heritage. that is what we do. We do amazing things because we can see that working together, in spite of our differences, we can get so many amazing things done.
I'm exhausted.